Hello and welcome to another episode of Shankism 2.0. This is AP Modern World History. Today we are going to do a quick belly flop into 1.6 developments in Europe. The time period in Europe is around 1000 to 1450 AD, which is known as the High Middle Ages. Government focus. So after the Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, Europe became fragmented politically, which led to constant war from other kingdoms and from outside invaders like the Vikings. Feudalism made sense for a politically weak Europe. This was a system of exchanges, land, meaning fief, for protection. The king's land would be given to the lords. They would be the vassals, the ones that are given land, who would protect it. The lord's land would be given and provided food and goods as payment. Wealth was measured in land, not cash. Sorry, all you paper chasers. Manorial System, which were large fiefs that provided complete self-sufficiency. Not really a need to trade or leave home. Most serfs would never go any further than 20 miles from their home. Not that serf, that serf. Serfs would have to ask permission from their lords to marry, even just to leave their home. They weren't slaves though. As the climate cooled and technology improved, more arable land was available, especially when they started using the three-field system. One field is fallow, meaning not used, and the other two are being used. Technologies such as heavier plows and windmills promoted population growth. Political trends in the later Middle Ages. By the 1200s, monarchies grew more powerful by employing their own bureaucracy and military. France's Philip II developed the first bureaucracy in 1180. Philip IV developed the Estates General, which is like Congress, kind of. Clergies and nobility and commoners are involved. Commoners would come later, still not adequately represented. The Estates General would advise the king, but with little actual power. They were only taxing commoners. This will come to a head in 1789, when the French Revolution begins. The Holy Roman Empire starts with Otto I in 962. Popes and kings in the Holy Roman Empire would duke it out until they settled lay investiture. Basically, what lay investiture is secular leaders wanted to appoint their buddies to positions in the church, and the church was like, no sir, no sir. Only church leaders can be appointed. Only we do that, right? It was resolved in the Concordat of Worms in 1122 when the church received autonomy over secular rulers. The Normans in England. In 1066, William of Normandy, named after the people who conquered it, Northmen, aka Vikings. They were getting invaded like, I don't know, they're just coming from the north. So we're going to call it Normandy, eventually what it would be called. They conquered England. So they have parts of Normandy, which is in France, and also England. So it's combined. But this will fuse Normans and Anglo-Saxons for what we now know as English. William will transform into William the Conqueror. Descendants of William would rule over England, such as King John, aka John I, John the Worst. In 1215, John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, which gave rights to nobles, limiting the power of the king. English Parliament was formed in 1265 AD, consisting of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. By common, they mean representatives of wealthy townspeople. 100 Years' War was fought between France and England in 1337 to 1453. For you math majors out there, that is not 100 years. Longbows and even the spread of gunpowder weapons would make its way into this long conflict. They'll both start to identify, though, as part of a country. I'm French now? I'm English now? I feel like we're a country or something. In Spain, the Spanish Christians had taken back Spain from the Muslims in 1492, known as the Reconquista. If you weren't Christian, you had three options. You convert, you get the heck out of Dodge, or you die. Not ideal for non-Christians. The Roman Catholic Church during the Middle Ages. After 1,054 years of marriage, Christianity got a divorce, also known as the Great Schism. Great Schism. Western Europe would be for the Roman Catholics, and Eastern Europe would be for the Orthodox Church. Europeans, though, will share this common Christian identity throughout Europe. The church held all the power. If you're a lord or a king, don't displease the church. They could bring a smackdown with an interdict, or a complete ban on all sacraments, which is what an interdict is. Meaning that these pesky peasants wouldn't get their sins washed away after a night of sinning. Not ideal if you're planning on going to heaven, though. The church became stupidly wealthy. When you become stupid with wealth, you typically become corrupt, and the church did just that in the 13th and 14th centuries. Not until Martin Luther came around did change really start to pick up steam. Not that Martin Luther. That Martin Luther. The Crusades. Europeans abided by primogeniture, meaning the eldest son received everything daddy had. Younger sons, you should have been born sooner. This, plus the promise of money, land, adventure, and a fast track to heaven, drove Europeans to reclaiming the Holy Land, Jerusalem. The First Crusade in 1095, Christians took Jerusalem. The Second Crusade, Christians lost the Holy Land from the Muslims, led by Saladin. Third Crusade, it was between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, and they tied. Fourth Crusade, 1204 range, when it ended, Christians killed Christians, and they never even made it to Jerusalem. So dumb. Marco Polo, in the 13th century, visited the court of Kublai Khan, and Europeans became mesmerized by his descriptions of Asia. They're like, whoa, this is so cool. Tell me more, Marco Polo. The three-field system will lead to a population growth, forming more major cities, but when the Black Plague comes around, it will KO Europe, killing 1/3 the population by about 1351. Did give peasants a nice bargaining chip, though, since much of the workforce was dead. It's really hard to work in the fields when you're dead. When all these events are happening, you need a scapegoat. Scapegoat throughout time, it seems like, definitely during this period in the Middle Ages, the Jews, they're the scapegoat. We know this today as anti-Semitism. They were all but kicked out of Western Europe by 1497. Brutal. Muslims also kicked out of Europe in places like Spain, but both Jews and Muslims played a major role in connecting Europe and the rest of the world. The Renaissance, banking families like the Medicis of Florence became patrons of the arts. This helped spark a revival in the Greco-Roman literature, art and culture, and civic virtue. Humanism sparked during this time. People became more secular, and God took a back seat. Nationalism, vernacular language, and centralized monarchs started to rise. When Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in around 1439 AD, he basically turned on the high-speed ancient internet. The printing press made it cheap and quick to produce books. People slowly became literate.
Praise be to literacy.
Well, this has been Shankism 2.0. That was 1.6 developments in Europe. I will see you later.